does stress make us gain weight even without food in the picture? Like, could just spiking our glucose high from stress potentially trigger us to restore that and gain weight? Okay, well, the first thing we have to look at is something super important, and that is the fact that back when we were stressed out, that stress response was a fight or flight response. Okay, meaning what happens is cortisol, adrenaline, epinephrine, these things spike, and that triggers a release of glucose. It triggers the liver to go through what's called gluconeogenesis, where it takes other substrates and converts them into glucose. And it does this rapidly, but it also dumps glucose from the liver glycogen stores into the bloodstream to fuel us to run from a saber-toothed tiger or to run from a threat, okay? So the bottom line is we think that we are stressed out today. In fact, I've even heard a lot of people say the stress levels of people today are so high and blah, blah, blah. I don't think our stress levels are higher than having to run away from a saber-toothed tiger and having to fear for your life every night you go to bed. I'm sorry, but that's not the same comparison as potentially losing your job. It's just not. Losing your job or potentially losing your job is stressful, but it's not getting chased by a tiger, okay? It's different. The difference now metabolically and why we respond to that so differently is simple. When we have that glucose spike, our bodies were built to run, to fight, to flee, and use that glucose. Now what do? We sit there and we boil. We just get mad, and this glucose goes up and doesn't have anywhere to actually go or do anything. After today's video, I put a link down below for LMNT electrolytes. They are not sweetened with erythritol. LMNT electrolytes are 1,000 milligrams sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams magnesium, but that link down below gets you a free sample variety pack with any purchase of LMNT electrolytes. So whether you purchase their sparkling, whether you purchase their stick packs, or whatever, you get a free sample variety pack, and that's exclusively using my link down below. That is drinklmnt.com/Thomas. Again, drinklmnt.com/Thomas. Really interesting stuff. They curb my appetite entirely, but I also have them in a fasted state, and I sip on them during my fasted workouts because I feel like I actually get replenished, but I also get my cravings satisfied. So that link is down below in the description. So there was a study that was published in Obesity, was a meta-analysis that took a look at this, and that demonstrated that psychosocial stress led to increased adiposity, more weight gain. Well, there's a couple of things that are going on here, okay? I guess the question is, if we're not eating and we're just stressed out, is that glucose going to circulate and restore as fat? Not necessarily quite like that, because it really needs somewhere to go. It can't just it's not just going to turn back into fat. It's glucose not just going to go through what's called de novo lipogenesis and turn into fat. But what it can do is it can absolutely affect how our insulin levels respond to glucose. Okay, when you have this spike in glucose that comes from stress and you're not acting upon it, you have high levels of circulating glucose, okay, without the follow-up response from the pancreatic beta cells. If the pancreatic beta cells are producing insulin in response to this glucose, then the glucose would actually get into the tissue and do what it's supposed to do. But there's no response as far as the insulin is concerned. So you're just having circulating glucose that's not having an effect on the actual cell. This can potentially lead to more insulin resistance because it's desensitizing the cell to glucose. So basically, the cell isn't able to respond to it as well. So chronically high levels of stress can lead to this. Now, then we have to look at the big picture and we say, yes, when we have these spikes in glucose, is there a potential for us to activate the region of the brain that would make us crave things? Usually when you see cravings occur, it's coming as a result of a glucose drop, okay? There's a study that was published in the journal Nature Metabolism that looked at 1,070 people, and it tracked over 71,000 ad libitum meals, and it found that, yeah, whenever they had a glucose drop, that was when they started to make poor food choices, and they ended up consuming more calories over the next 24 hours. So when you have a stress response and your glucose levels go high, they don't come crashing down in the same way as if you had eaten something high glycemic because they're not having the insulin response with it. The reason you have a spike and then a crash is because glucose spikes, then insulin lets the glucose into the cells, and then it comes crashing. Stress is actually worse because you have circulating glucose that can cause all kinds of potential issues. One of the biggest issues that I can think of is called glycation end products or advanced glycation end products. If you've ever caramelized an onion before, it's a pretty interesting thing, right? There's sugars in that onion, and when you caramelize it, it gets it kind of crusty and hard, and sometimes you get chunks of caramelization, right? Well, that is, in essence, in a very colloquial way, what's happening inside your body when sugars react with certain things. So when sugars and proteins, different things react, and there's like sort of this constant high sugar level, you have these advanced glycation end products that form. These are massive, massive oxidative stressors, okay? So they trigger an oxidative stress on the body. The body has to recoup from, or has to recuperate from. This, and we can go into a different video on advanced glycation end products, but pretty heavily researched. And anytime you are inducing oxidative stress on the body, you can affect aging, you can affect insulin response, you can affect all kinds of things. So this circulating glucose has a longer term effect, okay? Then, just like any kind of workout, after your glucose levels have been high and they do start to stabilize again, you have a little bit of a rebound effect. And this rebound effect kind of forces you into a recovery mode, okay? It's a pretty natural response. After a big degree of stress, when you offload that stress and you come back down, satiety hormones suppress and suddenly you want to eat. Okay, one of the benefits of being stressed out is during the stress, you don't necessarily have as much cravings, right? Because think about it. Why would you want to stop for a cheeseburger while you're running from a saber-toothed tiger? It doesn't make sense. But when you finally do get home, your body still has to trigger this mechanism to recoup from what has happened, okay? Now, I wish I could say that it's easy to just manage stress, right? That's easier said than done. But one of the things that I do recommend people do is try to monitor glucose as much as you can, even in a somewhat fasted state, to see where your stress levels are bringing your glucose, okay? Because we can't always just control our stress. We can talk about ways to do that, meditation, sauna, this, that, to try to control it, but it's unrealistic sometimes. Like, we live in a world where we have all kinds of different stressors and we don't necessarily act upon them. But if you are monitoring your glucose, okay, whether you're pricking your finger or you're using a continuous glucose monitor or whatever, there's inexpensive ways or more upmarket ways to go with it, you could notice that when you do have these stress responses that are different, right? You're like, I feel a little anxious, I feel a little stressed, let me test my glucose, or let me look at my monitor, let me see what's up. Then you can see, my sugar is a little bit high. Act upon it. Do something with it. You have the opportunity to actually make something good of that, because a similar thing is happening when you're exercising. Okay, you're stressing your body out, so your glucose actually does go up, okay? But then afterwards, everything kind of stabilizes because you have insulin sensitivity working to your advantage because you've been moving your muscles. You can connect the dots. When the glucose levels get high, you move. Okay, you move your body, you run, you do squats, you do whatever, so that the cells actually take it up, and there's a positive feedback loop there, the positive reaction. Stress correlates to physical movement, which is a healthier response than stress sitting in your body, boiling, being mad at your boss, wondering why you're gaining weight. As always, keep it locked here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.